Have you ever wondered if she truly loved you or just the idea of you? It always begins the same way: a glance, a smile, a sense that someone finally sees you. But what if that feeling isn't recognition, but projection? You think you've been chosen for who you are, but over time something shifts. The warmth fades. Confusion sets in. And one day you're no longer enough, not because you changed, but because the fantasy she built no longer fits. This isn't just heartbreak. It's the unraveling of an illusion. And if you look closely, you'll see it was never really about you at all. What if the first time she looked at you, she wasn't seeing you at all? It feels magical at first, doesn't it? That look, the one that makes you believe you're finally seen, finally chosen. Her eyes soften, linger, maybe light up just a little. It's electric. For a moment, it feels like you matter in a way you never have before. But here's the truth: no one tells you that moment is rarely about you. It's about who she hopes you might be. Not the man standing in front of her, but the one living in her imagination. She doesn't mean to lie to herself. In fact, she's probably convinced this feeling is real. And maybe you are too, because we all want to be seen. We all crave that moment where someone says, "You, I choose you." But Jung warned us love that begins in projection ends in illusion. She isn't choosing you. She's choosing a role, a possibility, a dream. At first you fit perfectly. You say the right things, move the right way, echo just enough of her fantasy to keep the dream alive. But slowly time starts to erode the mask. Your humanity begins to show your doubts, your contradictions, your truth. And that's when something shifts. The light in her eyes dims. Her gaze becomes colder, more distant. She doesn't even know why. But you do, because deep down you feel it. The part of you she fell in love with was never really you. It was the version she painted on the blank canvas of her hope. And now that the real you is bleeding through the cracks, she pulls away, not because you failed, but because you stopped matching the picture. It's a brutal thing to realize that the love you thought you earned was never about your soul, only your performance. And in that moment, you're not losing a woman. You're losing the illusion that you are finally enough just as you are. But maybe, just maybe, that realization isn't your end. Maybe it's your beginning. What if you were never loved for who you are, only for the script you didn't know you were handed? From the very beginning, you thought it was real. That she saw you, not just your body, your smile, your ambition, but something deeper, something sacred. And so you opened up. You let her in. You played along, believing this was mutual discovery. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, it stopped feeling like a relationship and started feeling like a performance. Not because she told you what to be, but because she didn't have to. Her approval became your direction, her silence your correction, her praise your reward. Somewhere along the way, you learned to shrink the parts of yourself that didn't fit the darker thoughts, the inconvenient opinions, the pieces too raw, too unpolished. You tucked them away, not because you were weak, but because you wanted to be chosen, needed to be. But that's the trap. Because the moment you start shaping yourself around someone else's image, you stop being a man and start becoming a mask. And she often unknowingly becomes the director. Not of a conscious manipulation, but of a psychological script passed down through generations. A script where men are strong, predictable, available, but never too deep, never too different, never too free. You think this is love? You call it partnership. But Carl Jung had another name for it: projection. You're not being loved, you're being assigned a character. And the moment you stop delivering the lines as written, the moment your authenticity clashes with the story she's crafted, something breaks. She pulls back. Her warmth cools. Her admiration turns to frustration, even resentment. And you're left wondering what changed. But nothing changed. You just stopped acting. And here's the tragedy: you never even knew you were auditioning. This is the moment many men spiral. They blame themselves or they blame her. But what if the problem isn't you or her? What if the problem is the unconscious story neither of you knew you were telling? What if the real mistake wasn't that you weren't enough, but that you were never supposed to be someone else's idea of love in the first place? What if the man she wants isn't even real, but a voice inside her that speaks louder than yours ever could? Carl Jung didn't describe the feminine psyche with the romance of poets. He studied it with surgical precision, and what he found was disturbing: that many women don't fall in love with men. They fall in love with the image of a man formed deep in their unconscious. He called it the animus, the internal masculine archetype every woman carries. And when that animus goes unchecked, when it's immature or distorted, it doesn't guide her toward love. It possesses her. You've seen it even if you didn't have the words for it. That moment when she begins speaking to you, not as you, but as if you were someone else. When her reactions don't match your actions. When no matter what you say, she seems to be arguing with a ghost, an invisible enemy you can't see, but are somehow always becoming. That's the animus in action. When undeveloped, this internal figure becomes tyrannical. It convinces her she knows best, that she sees through you, that her instincts are unquestionable. It moralizes, dominates, and criticizes without compassion. And worst of all, she doesn't even know it's happening. She thinks she's being wise, intuitive, empowered. But in truth, she's become the puppet of an inner voice that doesn't actually want intimacy, it wants control. And you're caught in the storm of that possession, trying to prove yourself to a fantasy that keeps shifting. One day you're a hero, the next a villain, but never a human being. Jung described this state as spiritual disconnection, where a woman loses touch with her own soul and projects her inner battle onto the men around her. And unless you understand that dynamic, you'll waste years trying to fight for her love, when what you're really fighting is her unconscious. It's not personal, but it feels personal. It breaks your heart, because no matter how much you give, you're never quite enough for a man who doesn't exist, the man her animus insists you should become. But the question is, how long will you keep playing a role in someone else's myth before you start writing your own? What if the feeling of being desired is the very thing keeping you from being truly known? There's a moment in every man's life when he feels it, that rush of being wanted. Her touch lingers, her words affirm, her eyes say, "You're different." And in that moment, something awakens in you. You think, finally, someone sees me, someone chooses me. But what you don't realize, not yet, is that desire can be deceptive. Because desire doesn't always come from recognition. Sometimes it comes from projection. You're not being seen, you're being imagined. And because no one taught you the difference, you take her desire as proof of your worth. You confuse passion with intimacy. You mistake being chosen with being understood. And it feels so good, so needed, that you ignore the subtle signs. The questions she never asks. The parts of you she never seems curious about. The pain you carry that never quite fits the fantasy she's built. But the illusion is comforting, isn't it? For a while it feels like home. Until the day you speak from your soul and she flinches. Until the moment your truth doesn't match her script and she pulls away. And you're left standing there wondering how love turned into distance. Here's the hard truth: most men have never been truly known. Not by the world, not by women, sometimes not even by themselves. Because we were trained silently, relentlessly, to trade authenticity for approval. We were told, don't be too much, don't be too soft, don't be too real. Just be who she needs, be what she wants. But what happens when what she wants isn't you? You begin to fracture, you perform, you adapt. You smile when you want to scream. You say it's fine when your soul is aching. And worst of all, you start believing that maybe the real you was never lovable to begin with. But that's the lie. That's the poison. Because the truth is, you don't need to be desired to be whole. You need to be known, fully, honestly, even if it means being rejected, even if it means being alone. Because the moment you sacrifice who you are to be wanted is the moment you lose the one thing she never really knew yourself. What if she's not leaving you because of who you are, but because you stopped being who she imagined you to be? It always starts beautifully, like a dream too good to question. She smiles at you as if you're the answer to something she never dared say out loud. And for a while you believe it. You rise into the role without even realizing it. The savior, the exception, the man who finally gets her. You try your best to live up to the unspoken promise she sees in your eyes. And for a while it works. But fantasies always have a shelf life. You don't know when it happens exactly. Maybe it's when you show your fear. Maybe it's when your voice cracks with doubt. Maybe it's when you speak a truth that doesn't fit the script. Suddenly there's a shift, subtle at first. The warmth turns cool. The compliments stop flowing. The gaze that once adored you now scans you like a stranger. You didn't change. You just became real. And reality is rarely as romantic as the projection. What she resents isn't your failure, it's your humanity. You weren't supposed to bleed. You weren't supposed to question. You weren't supposed to disappoint the myth she cast you in. But you did, because eventually every man does. No one can live inside a fantasy forever, not without suffocating. And so she leaves, or disconnects, or quietly punishes you for not being who she once believed you were. And you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? But that's the cruelest part. You didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped playing a role in someone else's unconscious story. You stepped off the stage and she didn't know what to do with you anymore. Jung warned us, when a person is possessed by projection, disappointment is inevitable. Because no human being can compete with a fantasy. No soul can live up to an image carved from childhood wounds and unmet dreams. And yet we try. We try until we break. But maybe that breaking isn't failure. Maybe it's freedom, because only when the fantasy dies can the real man finally begin to live. What if the only way out of her fantasy is to stop living in one of your own? At first you think the problem is her expectations, her coldness, her shifting standards. Then you think the problem is you, your flaws, your insecurities, your failure to be the man she wanted. But eventually, if you're brave enough, you come to a deeper truth. The real problem isn't her or you. It's the illusion you both believed in. The illusion that love can save you from yourself. That if you're wanted enough, admired enough, chosen enough, you'll finally feel whole. But Carl Jung called that illusion by its true name, projection. And the only way out of projection is individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a whole, integrated, authentic self. It's not glamorous. There's no applause, no quick steps, no alpha male finish line. Individuation is brutal, raw, and terrifying. It means facing the parts of yourself you've buried, the scared boy, the weak man, the parts you hid just to be accepted. It means walking away from the performance and learning to stand alone, not in rebellion, but in truth. Because the truth is this: as long as you need her to see you, you will never see yourself. And that's the real prison. Not her rejection, not her projection, but your own refusal to be enough without her. Individuation demands that you stop outsourcing your identity, that you confront your loneliness, your silence, your shadows, not just to conquer them, but to listen to them, to hear what your pain has been trying to say all these years. You were never supposed to be a role. You were meant to be a soul. Most men never begin this journey. They choose the comfort of validation over the agony of transformation. They keep trying to win love instead of earning freedom. But the few who walk this path, who face themselves without flinching, become something rare. Not a puppet, not a performance, but a presence. And once you find that presence, that unshakable self beneath the masks, you'll realize you were never meant to be chosen by her. You were meant to choose yourself. What if the life you're living isn't yours, but a performance scripted by your fear of not being enough? Most men never begin the journey of becoming who they truly are. Not because they're weak, not because they're incapable, but because they've been conditioned from boyhood to believe that love, validation, and worth must be earned by becoming what others need. We are taught early to chase approval from our fathers, our coaches, our teachers. And when we grow up, we carry that same hunger into relationships, hoping a woman's affection will finally silence the voice inside that whispers, "You're not enough." So we perform, we provide, we pursue, we mold ourselves into whatever shape is required just to be wanted. But Jung warned us, a man who does not begin the work of individuation is not truly alive. He is simply rehearsing his own disappearance. He becomes whoever the world asks him to be, but never who his soul was meant to become. And every time he hides his truth to keep the peace, every time he silences his need to avoid conflict, every time he sacrifices authenticity for connection, a piece of him dies, slowly, quietly, without a funeral. And what does he get in return? Conditional love, temporary approval, a seat at the table, until he stops playing along. Because the world rewards compliance, not consciousness. It wants predictable men, not powerful ones. It wants men who are polite, performative, agreeable, not men who walk with the weight of their own truth. So most men stay asleep. They build lives based on what others expect, not what they actually desire. They call it success. But deep down, they know They feel the emptiness, the quiet ache, the haunting sense that something is missing, not out there, but within. And that's the tragedy. Not that men are lost, but that they are never taught it's okay to be found, that it's okay to say no, to walk away, to stand still and ask the most dangerous question of all, who am I when no one is watching? Because only then, in the silence, in the solitude, in the rawness of not being needed, does the real journey begin. What if every time she said, "I love you," a part of you wondered, does she even know who she's loving? The tragedy isn't that you were rejected. It's that you betrayed yourself just to be accepted. It starts so subtly. A small compromise here, a softened truth there. You laugh at things that don't feel funny. You agree to things you don't believe. You hide your opinions, your fears, your edge, not because you're spineless, but because you're starving. Starving to be chosen, starving to matter. And so, like wet clay, you begin to reshape yourself, not into who you are, but into who you think she wants. You think this is love, sacrifice, devotion, selflessness. But Carl Jung called it by its real name, self-betrayal. Because when a man gives up his essence for the sake of approval, he doesn't become more lovable. He becomes hollow. You lose your voice. You lose your center. You become a mirror for her desires, a reflection of her needs. And for a while it works. She praises you. She clings to you. She says you're perfect. But perfection is a prison. It's not built for love. It's built for performance. Eventually she feels it. The lifelessness, the lack of spark, and the very qualities you thought would make her stay, obedience, reliability, availability, become the reason she pulls away. Because a man without boundaries isn't safe, he's invisible. She doesn't want a puppet. She wants a presence, someone she can feel, not just use. And when you vanish inside her expectations, she doesn't feel more secure. She feels more alone. But the worst part, you think it's your fault. You think you weren't enough. But the truth is brutal. You were never yourself. And no one can truly love the man who never showed up. So now you face a choice, the same choice every man must face if he wants to break free. Keep bending, keep pleasing, keep dying a slow spiritual death. Or stop. Stop molding. Stop performing. Stop betraying your soul in exchange for a smile. Because real love, the kind that frees instead of binds, can only find you once you've finally found yourself. What if everything you thought would make her stay is exactly what makes her lose interest? You were told to be kind, to be present, to listen, and you did all of it. You were dependable, attentive, loyal. You gave her consistency, availability, predictability. You made yourself safe, and still, she drifted. She grew distant. The warmth in her voice faded. The spark in her eyes vanished. And inside, a silent question echoed, "What did I do wrong?" But maybe the question isn't what you did. Maybe it's what you stopped being. Because the uncomfortable truth is, the feminine instinct isn't drawn to comfort, it's drawn to mystery. Not the kind of mystery that plays games or hides in fear, but the kind of depth that can't be fully tamed, predicted, or controlled. You thought love meant transparency, that if you let her see all of you, if you stripped yourself bare, gave her your time, your thoughts, your availability, you'd finally be enough. But in doing so, you erased the very thing that once captivated her, the unknown. You became a map with no uncharted places, a song with no tension. You made yourself too easy to reach, and in doing so, lost the weight of your presence. Women don't fall in love with men they can fully define. They fall for the gravity of a man who carries his own center, who doesn't give it away for affection. They're drawn to the one who stands rooted in his truth, not to defy her, but because he refuses to abandon himself. And yet this is where most men fall into the trap. They confuse love with surrender. They think obedience will earn intimacy. But Jung knew better. He taught that when a man collapses his boundaries to meet the needs of another, he loses the very magnetism that made him lovable in the first place. So she pulls away, not because she doesn't care, but because your soul disappeared behind a mask of agreeableness. The irony: the moment you stop trying to be everything for her is the moment she starts feeling your presence again. Because presence isn't about availability. It's about mystery with substance, depth with stillness, strength without performance, and that is what makes you unforgettable. What if the mask you wear isn't about impressing her, but about avoiding the terror of facing yourself alone? Loneliness isn't just silence, it's a mirror. One that shows you every part of yourself you've tried to outrun. The unworthy parts, the unloved parts, the broken pieces you keep bearing beneath smiles, status, or sex. And for most men, being alone means coming face to face with the man they've spent a lifetime performing to avoid. So we choose the mask. We play the charming one, the funny one, the successful one, anything but the honest one. We tell ourselves we're adapting, compromising, doing what's necessary to make a relationship work. But deep down we know, we're not adapting, we're abandoning. Not her, ourselves. Because as long as we keep performing, we don't have to ask the question that shatters illusions. Who am I when no one claps? Carl Jung understood this fear intimately. He called it the death before the rebirth, the painful severing from the false self we created to survive childhood society relationships. And most men, they can't do it. They would rather be needed than be real, rather be wanted than whole. Because being alone feels like death, and in some ways it is. The death of the actor, the mask, the illusion. And so we stay, in hollow relationships, in quiet desperation, in rooms filled with people who see us but don't know us. We tolerate the ache of disconnection because it's familiar, and familiarity feels safer than the rawness of solitude. But what if the loneliness you fear is the very portal to your freedom? What if solitude isn't punishment, but preparation? Because here's the truth, you cannot be whole while still begging to be seen through someone else's eyes. You cannot be free while living for applause. The journey inward is terrifying. It strips away everything performative, everything false, everything borrowed. But what remains, what survives the silence, is real, untouchable, unshakable. You'll lose people, you'll lose comfort, but you'll gain the one thing you were never supposed to live without: yourself. What if the silence you're avoiding is the only place where your real self has been waiting? Individuation, Jung's word for the journey of becoming whole, sounds noble when spoken, even beautiful. But no one tells you how it actually feels. The truth is, it doesn't feel like enlightenment. It feels like grief. It feels like death. It feels like being ripped away from everything you once believed made you lovable. Because to individuate is to lose the comfort of being a character in someone else's story. It's to step off the stage where you were praised for performing and into the raw wilderness of your own soul. There is no script here, no applause, no audience, just silence and truth. And that's why most men never do it. It's not because they lack strength, it's because they fear the loneliness. The terrifying solitude of no longer being what others expect, but not yet knowing who they truly are. You walk alone, you think differently, you see through things others still worship. You become, in the eyes of the world, colder, darker, harder to love. But you're not cold, you're awake. Because once you start seeing clearly, there's no going back. You notice the lies in people's smiles, the way they cling to fantasy, to roles, to projections, just to feel safe. And when you speak the truth, they'll say you've changed, that you're arrogant, distant, too intense. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you've stopped lying, and that makes people uncomfortable because most are still asleep in the dream you walked out of. Jung warned us, the individuated man is feared not because he is dangerous, but because he is free. And freedom to the unfree always looks like rebellion. But if you can hold steady, if you can survive the loneliness, the ridicule, the nights where everything inside you wants to crawl back into the role you left behind, something sacred happens. You begin to feel your own soul, not the one shaped by culture or parents or lovers, but the one that was always yours, quiet, strong, whole. And from that place, you don't need love to be real. You need to be real to love. What if the version of her you fell for wasn't fully her either? We talk so much about the male shadow, about his rage, his repression, his need to perform. But Jung reminded us that women too carry a shadow, a dark, unconscious force that when ignored doesn't disappear, it controls her from within. It speaks through her charm, her logic, her righteousness. And the tragedy is, most women are never taught to confront it. Instead, they are told they are already whole. From a young age, culture whispers to her, "You are the light, You are the emotion. You are the nurturer. She is rewarded for sensitivity, for intuition, for feeling, but rarely is she challenged to question herself. Rarely is she invited to confront the darker voices within the ones that manipulate, dominate, moralize without reflection. Carl Jung called this unexamined inner voice the animus, the masculine energy inside a woman. When integrated, it gives her clarity, vision, strength. But when left unchecked, it becomes a tyrant. It convinces her that she is never wrong, that she sees through people, that her emotions justify her actions, that any man who challenges her is dangerous. And here's where the man enter the frame not as a partner, but as a projection screen. She casts her inner war onto you. You become the villain in her unfinished story. You carry the weight of her unhealed wounds. And without even realizing it, she fights you for the very things she refuses to face in herself, the truth that she is not just light, she is shadow too. But this isn't about blame, it's about awakening. Because just as you must stop molding yourself to be loved, she must stop casting her unintegrated pain onto the men who try to love her. And neither of you can do that for the other. You cannot rescue her from the animus, just as she cannot save you from your own broken identity. What you can do is walk your own path so clearly, so rooted in truth, that she is forced to choose awaken or project. And if she does awaken, not for you but for herself, then maybe, just maybe, love can finally begin. Not as fantasy, but as freedom. What if what you call love was never a relationship between two people, but a dance between two illusions? Projection is one of the most deceptive forces in the human psyche. It doesn't come with alarms. It doesn't announce itself. It feels like intuition. It feels like chemistry. It feels like fate. But beneath the surface, something far more dangerous is happening. You are not loving a person. You are loving your own unconscious hopes, wounds, and unmet needs reflected back at you. Jung said it best: projection changes the world into the replica of one's unknown face. What you cannot face in yourself, you will try to find or fix in someone else. And when both people are projecting, neither one is truly present. She sees in you the father who never stayed, the hero who was never real, the mystery she thinks will complete her, and you see in her the mother who finally chooses you, the nurturer who will never abandon you, the validation your soul still begs for. But none of this is love, it's psychological theater. And when the masks begin to slip, the tragedy unfolds. Because now the illusion is crumbling, and all that remains is reality. And reality rarely lives up to fantasy. That's when blame begins. You say she changed. She says you hid something. But the truth, the illusion broke. That's all, and that's the danger of projection. It doesn't just distort how we see each other, it robs us of the chance to actually know each other. You don't just lose the relationship. You lose the opportunity for truth, for depth, for something real. So what's the alternative? It's brutal self-awareness, the willingness to withdraw the projection, to reclaim what you've placed on the other person, and ask yourself, what part of me have I handed them to carry? Until both people do that work, face their shadow, integrate their pain, the relationship remains a game of mirrors. You call it love. Jung called it possession. And until you learn to see clearly without the haze of childhood longing, fantasy, and fear, you will never truly love another. You will only love the story you hoped they'd tell you about yourself. What if the pain you carry isn't from being unloved, but from being loved for someone you never truly were? She once looked at you like you were everything, like you were the answer to a question she'd never found the words for. And in that look, you found meaning. You found worth. You started to believe that maybe, just maybe, you were enough. But over time, the warmth faded. The spark dimmed. The praise turned to pressure. Her gaze became heavy, almost critical. And without warning, you were no longer her everything, you were her disappointment. And it didn't make sense. You hadn't changed. You hadn't failed. You were still showing up, still loving her, still trying. So why did it feel like she was pulling away? The answer is brutal. You were never loved for who you are. You were loved for who she imagined you to be. The fantasy, the projection, the dream. That's what she fell for. You were cast in a silent movie you never auditioned for, and the moment you stopped matching the script, the role was revoked. Not because you became less, but because you became real. And real men with their doubts, their needs, their humanity, don't fit neatly inside someone else's fantasy. And yet here you are not grieving her, but grieving the version of yourself she once adored. That's the heartbreak no one talks about, losing the illusion that you were finally enough. But here's the truth, you didn't fail her. You failed to fulfill the myth she created in her mind, and that myth was never yours to carry. Jung warned us this would happen. He called it inevitable. Because when two unconscious people meet, they don't fall in love with each other. They fall in love with reflections, with ideals, with unresolved childhood longings dressed up as romance. So don't mourn the loss of her love. Mourn the time you spent trying to be someone you were never meant to be, and then begin again. This time not to be loved, but to be known, not to play a role, but to stand finally and fully as yourself. What if your real power begins the moment you stop trying to prove you're worthy of love? Most men spend their lives performing, not on a stage, not in front of cameras, but in conversations and relationships in silence, trying to become whatever they think will finally make them lovable. We perform strength when we feel afraid. We perform certainty when we feel lost. We perform charm with ambition, stoicism, all to earn a nod, a smile, a touch, a whisper that says you matter. But Jung warned us, as long as you're performing, you are not free. You are still a slave, not to another person, but to the image you believe they require of you. And here's the brutal truth, every time you shape yourself for approval, you abandon the man inside you who was never asking for permission to exist. The moment you stop performing, truly stop, the world will notice. She will notice. The people around you will feel it, not in your words, but in your stillness, in your refusal to explain yourself. In your unshakable presence that no longer bends for applause. They'll say you've changed, that you're cold, distant, emotionally unavailable, but they're not reacting to your absence, they're reacting to your authenticity. They miss the role you used to play, not the man you've become, because performance is comfortable, predictable, easy to consume, but a man who is rooted quiet and whole is not easy to control. And that unsettles people who depend on your compliance to feel safe. But let them be unsettled. You weren't born to be easy to digest. You were born to be real. And real men cannot be seduced by projection. They cannot be manipulated by need. They do not trade truth for temporary affection. This is freedom, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need to be understood, the kind that stands in the middle of rejection, silence, disapproval, and stays rooted. Because once you've met the man beneath the performance, you'll never trade him again for a round of applause. What if the moment you stop needing to be understood is the moment you finally become undeniable? There's a strange shift that happens when a man truly individuates, when he stops chasing validation, stops performing for affection, and begins living from a place so rooted in truth that nothing external can shake it. At first, people are intrigued. There's a quiet gravity in you now. A presence that can't be explained, only felt. But soon after comes the discomfort, not yours, theirs. Because when you're no longer performing, you no longer fit into the categories that made others feel secure. You don't respond to manipulation. You don't flinch at disapproval. You don't chase, and that makes you untouchable. Not because you're cold or arrogant, but because you've stopped needing to be controlled. You've stepped off the emotional stage where others handed you scripts, and you began writing your own. Women feel it the most, especially those still possessed by projection, still searching for a man who will play the part they've scripted in silence. When they meet a man who doesn't bend, who doesn't need to be worshipped or needed, they often call him emotionally unavailable, too distant, too serious. But that's not the truth. The truth is you are now immune to fantasy. They can't hook you with flattery. They can't shake you with silence. They can't guilt you with withdrawal. You see the game now, not to judge it, but because you've finally stepped beyond it. And from that space, you begin to live not as a puppet of someone else's need, but as a sovereign being. Clear, calm, unapologetically yourself. Yes, it's lonely at times. Not because you're disconnected, but because most of the world is still sleeping in illusions you've burned. And yes, you'll be misunderstood, labeled, even resented. But that's the cost of true freedom, to be real in a world built on performance. And when the right people finally find you, the ones who see through the noise, who aren't afraid of depth, who've done their own work. They won't try to change your script. They'll just say, there you are. What if the love you've been chasing isn't real because the version of you chasing it isn't either? We've been told that love completes us, that somewhere out there someone holds the missing piece. And so we search relentlessly, hoping that in someone else's eyes, arms, approval, we will finally feel whole. But wholeness was never meant to be given. It must be remembered, reclaimed, earned through solitude, through pain, through radical self-honesty. Because the truth is, no woman can complete a man who has not yet met himself. And no man can truly love a woman he still needs to fix him. What we often call love is projection wrapped in poetry. Two wounded people dragging their unmet needs, childhood fears, and forgotten parts into each other's arms, hoping for salvation. But that isn't love, it's dependency, it's fantasy. It's the illusion of connection, not the embodiment of it. Jung saw this clearly. He knew that until a man integrates his own inner feminine, his sensitivity, his emotion, his intuition, he will chase those qualities in a woman not out of appreciation, but out of absence. And unless she faces her animus, the inner masculine voice of control, logic dominance, will use men to fulfill what she refuses to awaken within herself. But when both have done the work, when the man has stopped performing and the woman has stopped projecting, something changes. The dynamic shifts from performance to presence, from fantasy to truth, from need to choice. She no longer loves him because he fills a void. She loves him because he stands beside her without asking to be rescued. And he doesn't love her because she mirrors back his worth, but because she no longer demands he abandon it. There are no roles left to play, no scripts, no games. Just two souls whole on their own, choosing not from emptiness, but from fullness. Not from fear, but from freedom. And that love is rare. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it doesn't need to be proved. It just stands raw, honest, and undistorted because it's finally real. The illusion of love and the reality of self. If there's one truth this journey reveals, it's this: most of us were never taught how to be whole before we tried to love. We chase relationships hoping someone will heal what we're unwilling to face in ourselves. But love built on projection is not love, it's performance. And performance always comes with pressure. Carl Jung taught that until you confront your unconscious, the wounds, the shadows, the parts of you've hidden, you will keep repeating the same painful patterns, calling it fate. You'll mistake validation for intimacy. You'll confuse being desired with being seen. And you'll keep wondering why it never feels like enough. The real work isn't finding the right person, it's becoming the man who no longer needs to be chosen to know his worth. That means facing your loneliness, owning your fears, and refusing to shapeshift for approval. It means no longer blaming others for the roles you volunteered to play. Because when you stop performing and start becoming, you'll attract people who aren't looking for an actor, but for someone real. And that's the life-changing truth. Wholeness is not something love gives you. It's what you must bring to love.